What is up, guys, and welcome to our special World Cup qualifier preview on Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my two great co-hosts, Federico Perez and Ralph Hanna. And guys, here we are. We're with the Avi Roja yet again, because you know what that means. The World Cup qualifiers begin this week in exactly 2 days. And I have to say, guys, it's the first time in a long time that I feel very excited about not one Paraguay game, but two Paraguay games. Not even just because of the rivals that we have to face, but just, the players that we have, the good results, the manager. There's kind of a positive vibe, really, that Paraguay hasn't been through in quite some time. So obviously two big games that can really change the trajectory of the World Cup qualifying journey for Lavi Roja, really getting into a position that could see them really in a good position now halfway towards the end of the entire qualifiers. I mean, yeah, we have to go straight into it because obviously the first game against Ecuador is this Thursday in Quito. But yeah, I want to go to Fede on this one. Who is there? Who is in Paraguay? It's been an interesting month actually since the game against Brazil. It felt like everyone was so happy about that, but it almost feels like now we're just expectant. And here we are on the week of the game. Yeah, I feel like what do you feel is the vibe over there in Paraguay? I feel like people are kind of excited in a way about what's going to happen against Ecuador and Venezuela.
Hi, Roberto. Hi, Rob. Hi to everyone listening to Guarani Vision. It's great to be back with another preview episode of what could happen with our Ave Roja in these two upcoming games. I'm totally excited, just like you, Roberto. I feel rejuvenated. I feel brand new after what we've seen in these last two games. I feel like the World Cup can actually happen for us. It feels so good to just say it right after these two games. Everything has just pretty much clicked and everything has fallen into place. But it's just been two games, guys. So I don't want to get overexcited. I want to go game by game. Hopefully, we do get something out of Quito, a place where we've never won before. It's really hard to play out up there in the altitude. We got to talk about that game first, and then talk about Venezuela. That's a game I think a lot of people are expecting to win at home, especially after what we did against Brazil. So yeah, definitely the hype is up. I'm not seeing that many flags out yet, but you know how it is here, Roberto. When the team comes and plays here in Defensores del Chaco, that's when people start showing their pride. I think most people just want to watch the game by TV. Quito is very hard for Paraguayans to make that trip, so I don't think we're gonna have that many fans in Quito. Maybe the people that do live in Ecuador, Paraguayans over there. And yeah, we definitely got to talk about the list. Not many new names, but we did throw a couple of them on our last episode. We're definitely gonna get in too deep of everything that we have on this list and what could happen in these two very important games for our national team.
Definitely. And Ralph, I mean, I feel like when you go into a new qualifying process, it's always the feeling of like, okay, what can this Paraguay team do to either shock us or disappoint us? But now I feel like maybe the bar has really been placed high. Like we need to expect results now from this side, which again, we always say that out of force in the sense of like, yeah, they have to get it, otherwise their World Cup qualifying campaign is screwed. But I think now there is that really big belief, especially what we saw against Uruguay and Brazil. Yes, it's been 2 games. They've only scored 1 goal in those 2 games, but it does paint a good picture and a good scenario of saying, okay, if Paraguay can do that against, roughly two of the best of the 4 best teams in South America, two of the best teams in, maybe top 10, top 20 in the world, why can't they do it against the rest of South America and more so against Ecuador and Venezuela, who are not exactly at that level of Uruguay and Brazil? So it's like basically saying, okay, you've done it against the big boys, then it kind of feels like you can do something against two teams that are of lesser quality than the two that we just faced.
Yeah, that's right. Hi, guys. Hi, everybody watching and listening. I think that's the point, right? That they've done it in the two hard games to start Alfaro's tenure at Paraguay, and now it's like these become the bread and butter, the winnable games in people's opinion. Of course, what we know in reality is that there's much more intricacy to that. As Fede mentioned, Paraguay's never won in a World Cup qualifying Quito. They've won one competitive game, 1979, Copa America. So you got to go way back. But even against Venezuela at home, they've won, but they've never won by huge margins, except for I think once they won by 3 goals. But usually they only just scrape past that game by 1 goal as well. So the reality is that you're in a fight to qualify. And these games, each game you have to take on its merit, and it's going to get, I'm sure, very kind of, I would say it's going to get very tactical up there in Quito first, where Paraguay will play without Diego Gomez, and then down in Venezuela when you're going to have the kind of impetus to go out and win and be the team that controls the ball and has to take the game to the other team, which is something we haven't seen yet from Alfaro, right? Remember, with both Uruguay and even the Brazil game, Paraguay didn't have to have much of the ball or much of the possession. Probably won't against Ecuador. So really, it's going to be that Venezuela game. We're going to have to see now, what can Paraguay do when they are favorites and they do have more of the ball.
Yeah, it's very interesting just to look at some of the players, and we'll actually rehash the list as we did last week. In goal, we have Roberto Junior Fernandez, Gatito Fernandez, Carlos Coronel, and Juan Espinola as the shot stoppers. In defense, we have Gustavo Gomez, Junior Alonso, Fabián Balbuena, Santiago Arzamendia, Omar Alderete, Gustavo Velasquez, Saúl Salcedo, Juan Cáceres, and one player just from the local side, Dani Rivas, and of course the new name in this one, Agustin Sandez, the new nationalized player, Argentine-born with Paraguayan parents. So, I mean, just to go off from the get-go, I mean, we'll talk about the midfield and the forwards line in a second, but Fede, only one player from the local league. Does that say much about just the quality of the league and like maybe Alfaro isn't been impressed of what we've seen? Or is it just a case of him sticking with his guns? And yeah, I get the notion of, you don't really want to change a winning team if it does so well. But of course, like all winning teams, there's always some faults. No one's perfect. But I think it shows that Alfaro is really sticking with his gun and really trying to create a base of players. It doesn't even have to be from the local league. I mean, is it just that, or is it just a case of like, no, I think it's just because there's no one really sticking out from the local league?
I think it's a little bit of both, especially that first part, Roberto, because he's been pretty much to a lot of games. I've seen him in pretty much every stadium watching all the big games. So he's seen plenty of games. I would even say over close to 100 by this point, because he's been over here over almost. He's had the opportunity to see a lot of players, but I don't know if he's really convinced with the level. And I don't think there's a lot of players standing out, especially in the big teams, in Cerro, Olimpia right now. Olimpia is at top, but I don't see a player right now that has been stable, that has maintained his performances. And no, to be honest, we were just talking about it off the air. I don't see one player out of the top of my head. The young ones have left early, and I think those are the ones that are now on this list. I think they're trying to mix it up with the experienced players, and that's kind of been something that Gustavo Alfaro has tried to do. That's why he's brought the young blood like Hugo Cuenca. But if we're going to talk about the defense itself, it's nice to see Saúl Salcedo. He was in the local league not long ago playing for Olimpia. He actually started the year off playing for Olimpia, but he does apparently watch a lot of Argentinian football, or the Argentina league. He thinks is very competitive because he keeps on looking at players there, right? You just mentioned one of the new names. My expectations are there because I don't know much about him. I'm talking about Agustin Sandez, what he can bring to the table, what he can bring to the team. But after what he did with Juan Cáceres, who was a total sub in Lanús, still subbing in Lanús. They're going to play semifinals in Sudamericana, but he's a sub there. He's not playing. And Alfaro brought him on, and he had him ready for the action, and he had him ready to stop a Real Madrid player like Vinicius, top of the world player. So I think we can just trust right now on Alfaro's picks and hope that they can do the best out there, especially this new phase, right? I mean, it could be a once in a lifetime opportunity for them. If they screw it up, they might never be called up again. But I do think he's trying to look out there for players that are not well known, that have a long career ahead of them still, and that he can actually build on. I think he's looking at those different qualities, and he's mixing all of that into his picks. And that's why we're seeing a Sanders in there. Or what do you think, Ralph? Why do you think he's still bringing in new players into the locker room? And it's not just new players. is pretty much an Argentinian. Yeah, his dad was Paraguayan, but you know how it is in that locker room. There's a lot of Guarani going on, so he's going to have to catch up with his new language also. I don't think he speaks Guarani much in Argentina.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? This has always been one of the kind of targets for, I think, new Paraguay coaches is trying to find that untapped talent. Because we have the talent pool that everybody knows about. It's like, who can we bring in from outside? And because of immigration to Argentina, there's a huge amount of people in Sandes's position. In fact, I think it was the under 15s went recently to Argentina or the under 20s, and they had like 26 kids. I don't know if all of them ended up being eligible, but you can find these players that could possibly be part of the Paraguay team in the future. So that's always one thing people are looking at, right? We remember previously some have worked, some haven't, right? Gaston Jimenez, we don't see anymore, but he was a key guy for Berizzo. But then another person like Cubas has actually become such a key player for Paraguay. So also in that position, right, of Argentinian born. So I think that's always been something they're looking at. What's really interesting, though, going back to the local league, is in this case, Alfaro has picked from 11 different countries apart from Paraguay. So we got as far afield as United Arab Emirates, we got neighboring countries, Argentina, Brazil, but also we got Bolivia, right, with Alfio Oviedo. Alex Arce is back from Ecuador, US, Canada, because of course Cubas is actually in Canada. So he is looking all around the world, but he's not convinced by the Paraguayan league, it seems, as we noticed with just this one call-up. Rivas isn't the best. He's probably not the best player in the local league, but he's looking in a very specific position, right? I think the nice thing about Rivas is he can play left back, but he can also play in front of a left back if you got really into double marking and the defensive end of the game, trying to see something else. So I think that's why he's gone specifically with Rivas in this case. And then just to bring it back and looking at that defense, when we did this preview show before, I was pretty convinced he would go with a line of 5, looking at what he'd done with Costa Rica. He went with the line of 4. It's been working. We're going to assume he keeps that again. So he brought back Gustavo Gomez. So it looks like, Gomez is going to be playing again. Alderete has to play. I think he's been the best central defender Paraguay have had recently. So then you're looking again at the fullbacks, and Cáceres, does he continue after his great game against Brazil? And then this left back is really interesting, right? Because does it become an Asamendia with a little bit more experience? Is it Junior Alonso that is obviously much more defensive, but he used him because he trusts him very much? Alfaro has worked with him before. Or is this the reason Sandes is in, right? If I'm going to call him up, I'm going to play him, which we saw with Cáceres. We even saw with Hugo Cuenca that he got game time. So I think the big question mark here is going to be who ends up playing at left back.
That would be a big baptism of fire, wouldn't it, Fede, for Sandes to make his debut in Quito for Paraguay. I mean, that would be a big one for, I think, like similarly with, Cáceres, that there weren't a lot of people that knew about him, and he was able to, mark Vinicius Jr. out of the game. I think we're going to have to expect the same from someone like Sandes. But if he does get the call, I mean, would you do it? I mean, if you were in his position, do you feel like it's necessary? Or do you feel like what you see from players like Alonso, Arzamendia, maybe Rivas, that you feel like that could be the game for the left back, one of these left backs?
No, I'm actually happy that he's bringing in new players. I think this changes up the locker room. It changes the mood in the practices. It motivates the players, the competition itself. I mean, Arzamendia knows that he's got to play his ass off if he wants the starting role. Because after what we've seen from Junior Alonso, who is somebody that has the confidence from the coach because he had him before in the club. So, and now he's bringing in Sandes. So yeah, Arzamendia's got to be feeling that fire, right? Like he's picking other players. He's bringing in Daniel Rivas. He has a lot of competition in that spot. So even though he is probably the more attacking left back that we have, I've seen a couple of minutes, a couple of games from Sandes playing for Rosario Central, trying to study this player. And I do think he's more of a defensive left back, just like Ralph was mentioning, maybe more of a Junior Alonso type of player, not going forward that much. So he could be thinking about a line of 5 eventually again. I do think we got a very flexible coach in that situation, tactical wise, strategy wise also. I do think he he thinks a lot about which team he's gonna play against, where he's gonna play, and who he needs to stop. And I do think in Ecuador there are very good players, several players you're really gonna have to stop, and fast players, and they feel really comfortable in Quito. So maybe the first part of your strategy has to be just like it was in Uruguay: not concede a goal, not let a single space open up. And I do think that was part also of making this list, Roberto.
Yeah, definitely. Looking at the midfield, we have Miguel Almiron, Matias Villasanti, Caco Romero Gamarra, Andres Cubas, Ramon Sosa, Diego Gomez, Damian Bobadilla, Hugo Cuenca, and the new name, Matias Galarza from Talleres. I mean, again, we're seeing some little change in this team. I think the big question mark, and Ralph had mentioned it now, and we'll go to that first, is no Diego Gomez against Ecuador. We've seen some good performances from the likes of Damian Bobadilla, from Andres Cubas. I think certainly those are definitely the players that you need to have in consideration. But who's going to replace Gomez? Who's the one that could go and step up? Is it Villasanti? Is it Galarza? What do we see in this one? Where do you feel would be the best? Or is it just an entirely different setup that Alfaro has to do for this specific game?
I think it'll be a different combination of what we've seen already, but it's actually going to be three players that we know very well, because he partnered Gomez with Cubas, right, in the first game against Uruguay, but then Cubas was injured for the second game, so he brought in Villasanti and dropped back Bobadilla. I think the three, Villasanti, Cubas, Bobadilla, will end up playing in this game in Ecuador. I think it works really well for him, right? You have Cubas is the holding midfielder. Villasanti can kind of sit alongside him, shuttle a little bit, and then Bobadilla can do some of the higher pressing and join with the forward line, who are also going to end up doing a lot of defensive work as we've seen so far. So I feel we're going to get that combination, and that should work best, the Villasanti, Cubas, and Bobadilla. And I think in a way, it could be a good thing, right, for Diego Gomez. Have a little rest, not kind of have that time in altitude where obviously people get very fatigued and tired, and be there for the game against Venezuela, where he's going to be the key man again. So I think I would go with those three, looking at Cubas as such a key player in this midfield.
Yeah, I think Cubas is going to be there. He was probably the best fighter that we had against Uruguay. I'm actually kind of concerned about his shoulder, because I was actually listening to his situation, his injury. It's not the first time he takes his shoulder out of place, guys, and he's actually not wanting to do surgery, even though some doctors are telling him to go and go for that surgery, because if it just keeps on popping up, it could be a problem for him. Yeah, it's not a problem to play football. That's why he's back in less than a month, but he's having to, I believe, strengthening that shoulder, trying to make it better. And I'm happy he's back. I don't think we have another player like him. I think even when the qualifiers were actually starting, we were saying, who's going to be that player? Who's going to be that aggressive player to get the ball back? And it's definitely Andres Cubas. I don't see another player on this list that could do that. I think a local player that could do it is Gomez, Marcos Gomez. That we saw him in the Olympics, but he hasn't been playing for Olympia. That's why he's probably not being called up. He's the other player that I believe can do that job in the midfield, and you need to do that, especially when you play away. You need a player that can get you the balls back, and Villasanti has grown a lot in that sense. He's very aggressive. I think in Brazil he's kind of gained that in his game, because he was always a player that could treat the ball well, that could give you good passes, but he was never that aggressive to get the ball back, and he was never a tactical player, in the sense that he kind of disorganized the midfield. Also, I do think that playing alongside the same teammate several games gives you experience, and I do think right now we're seeing that from Cubas and Villasanti. They've been playing together several games now, and they know where each other is. I think you just need to build on that. And without Diego Gomez, there's a spot open there, guys. I don't see another playmaker like Diego Gomez. What I saw against Brazil was just a guy that kind of took over the game. He was all over the place. He was connecting the players. He was giving balls to Miguel Almiron. He was giving balls to Julio Enciso. I mean, he was doing a lot of things. I don't know if we have a player like him. I don't see him, seriously. Maybe we're going to see more of a tactical player in the starting lineup. Maybe even a surprise, because we have Matias Galarza there. I don't know if you guys saw Matias Galarza on his last game with Talleres. He was subbed out, I think, 20 minutes in the game because his coach was not happy with what he was doing out there, and he was really angry. He actually said a couple of things to his coach. So I don't know how his mindset is coming in as he heads into not his first call up, but he's coming back into the team. So, and he's definitely going to want to make the best out of his opportunity. I don't know, Roberto. I really have no idea who he's going to put in there for Diego Gomez. Maybe putting somebody that can run all over the place more than a player that can connect the team. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it would be really a big shock if they get like someone like Cuenca. Imagine that. Imagine if he gets that opportunity, to kind of run around the Ecuadorian midfield and then try to create some damage there. But I agree with Ralph. I think it kind of is more sensical, logical in the sense of getting someone like Cubas who could kind of do the dirty work in the back, and then you have Bobadilla and Villasanti who can interconnect with the attack, which we'll talk about right now. But I think it kind of makes sense. I think just having that kind of, experience, structure, and just tactical awareness, you kind of need to go for those three. I think it kind of makes sense if you look at it from a broad standpoint. And looking at the attack, obviously the main talking points are always going to be Enciso. We did mention Almiron, but he's listed as a midfield, but it's definitely certain that he's going to be playing on the attack. But you get some interesting names on this one. Antonio Sanabria is back. He's gonna have the chance to play for Torino, actually, guys, this coming up because of an injury that happened to Duvan Zapata. So he's trying to get his starting point, but he didn't play a single minute so far in the qualifiers. One name that is back though, Angel Romero. Angel Romero is back. Fede. I mean, this is an interesting name that has been doing so well at Corinthians. I mean, we obviously talk about Alfio Oviedo, kind of the big shock of them all. But we didn't mention too much about Angel Romero in the last show. It's interesting. He is the top goal scorer out of all the players here. 8 goals in 44 games. So it looks like, Alfaro is really trying to go for players that have done it before on the national team. Barreto, unfortunately, Adam Barreto is not on this squad. He hasn't really demonstrated enough at River Plate. So comes in Angel Romero. Is it a wise choice? Is it a wise choice to bring in someone that obviously has done it before? A little bit on the older side compared to the other strikers, but hey, he has bags of experience. I think that's what matters.
He has the experience, guys, right? And he knows what it is to put this jersey on. And I think he's been working to get that comeback, working to get that on another opportunity. I think he feels that he's in depth with the country. I feel that he's one of those players that wants to show what he's made of, and he's done it before. He's had his highlights in big games, and yeah, unfortunately we never saw the Romero twins like we wanted to see them, right, in this national team, playing together, being those amazing players that they were at the beginning of the career in Cerro Porteño, just like it happened with Almiron and in most of his time with the Albirroja. But Angel Romero right now is, you talk to any Corinthians fans right now and you say Angel Romero and they just bow down, guys. I mean, that's just an idol for them. And it's not because of what he's doing now. It's because of it's his second time around, and he's come into this mid-crisis. The club has not done well. They didn't have enough money, but they brought him in as a star, and he's found his level. I mean, when he got to Corinthians, he was not this Angel Romero that I've seen this season. And he caught fire, guys. And I'm seeing him run starting plays even from the midfield. So he's feeling really good with his body. I think he's feeling loose like never before. And bringing in a player that's feeling that confidence to the national team in a team that just has been Brazil, I think it's a perfect combination. Give the player an opportunity. Definitely Alfaro did not like something out of Adam Barreto. That's why he's not calling him back. Adam has gone cold. We talked about this, I think, last time around. He hasn't been scoring. He's been playing in River. He might even play the semifinals, the final of the Libertadores, but he's not scoring. And we need strikers that can score, strikers that can do something in this team. And Nakel is not just a center forward. He can play as a center forward, but I see him doing, his work on the side, especially on the right side. And I wouldn't be surprised, guys, if we see Alfio Oviedo and Alex Arce even together. Why not try it out? I mean, these are the two guys, the only ones that know how to play in altitude. And the game is going to be played at 4 or 5 p.m. right under the sun. So you got to put players out there that can run. You got to put players out there that can do their thing in the altitude. And Quito is very hard, guys. Under the sun, the humidity, it's not the same thing as La Paz. A lot of players have told me this before. So you need players that know what it's about playing there. I wouldn't be surprised, Ralph, if he goes with both of these attackers. I don't see Pita having an opportunity right off the go. Maybe Anka could get some playing times, but I wouldn't be surprised, huh? I wouldn't be surprised. I think Alfaro has a strategy under his shoulder.
Huh? Just give me the stat of Alex Arce real quick, because it's interesting. He's going back to his home stadium that he's played club football. 15 of his 26 goals that he scored this year for Liga de Quito were at that same stadium. So it would make sense, and we're already seeing reports that it looks like Arce is going to get the start as the striker against Ecuador, and that Pita will probably play against Venezuela. But yeah, like Fede had mentioned, you have another player like Alfio Vieira that knows what it's like to play in altitude, and someone like Angel Romero who has consistently scored for Paraguay when he has been able to get that opportunity.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because the two key players that started in the last qualifiers are Enciso and Almiron, and they're not getting huge amounts of minutes. I mean, Almiron's kind of been saved, I think, by the League Cup game against Wimbledon, where he actually got 90 minutes, and then I think he got like 28 or 30 minutes at the weekend. But if you're not getting many minutes and then you have to go to altitude, that's going to be a really difficult task. So I think that's where Alfaro is trying to cover his bases with somebody like Romero who really can run a lot. And we saw Romero do like very good defensive jobs for Paraguay on the right side under Berizzo, I think in the game against Argentina, I remember the away qualifier. So he knows he has a player there that could do that kind of work. You mentioned Alex Arce. I think, yeah, he has to be the starter here, right? It just seems to make the most logical sense. The kind of hold-up play and the work that Peter does is interesting, but I think we also saw that that's why you don't need Alan Barreiro, because you have Peter can do that kind of job, and so it gave some extra space in the squad. And Oviedo, obviously another player that is able to play and score at altitude. So I suppose what's really interesting is if you do end up playing Oviedo and Arce together at the start, you probably drop in, I guess, Enciso behind them. So that means there's no space at the moment for Almiron, right? So we'll have to see what happens there. But it does seem hard that if you're gonna play Arce and Oviedo up front, then you're not gonna have space for both Enciso and Almiron. And Roberto pointed out, yeah, we haven't even mentioned Ramon Sosa yet, who's probably of the Premier League players is the one in the better form.
He's the only one that's scored so far in the Premier League out of all of them, not just this season, but since the return of the players going back to.
There you go, right? Yeah, he's the one goal scorer there, and that's what Paraguay really needed, the goals. So it's interesting to see how that front line is really going to fit together. So it seems, I don't know, as we talk through this, we're more or less sure of our defense. We're pretty sure about our midfield, at least two of the three, I think. And so now it's that forward line that's really where nobody's sure what's going to happen. By the way, today, at the time of recording, in a few hours, they have training that's open to the press. So maybe people will start to see some of the lineups coming out and some of those ideas. Yesterday, when they trained, there was still 3 or 4 players that weren't there, including Enciso, because they were still arriving. So I mean, we haven't had a full training session yet to be able to try and find out what Alfaro might be thinking. But it does really sound like that front line is where we're struggling.
Yeah, we didn't get the chance to listen to our coach right before they left to Ecuador either. I thought he was gonna speak with the press, at least at the airport, because he didn't give a press conference after he gave out the list. That was kind of weird for me. go to Ecuador and not talk with the local press. Now you're gonna talk with them, the rivals, and he didn't give it a single title here. So that's why we're speculating, Roberto. That's why we have pretty much no idea what he's gonna do, either in defense, in midfield, or in offense. And because he's been changing it up, I don't think he's gonna go with a starting 11 game by game. I do think he's gonna go strategy and game by game in that situation. Like I said before, I think he looks a lot into who he has to play against, and that's when he starts making up his mind.
I just find it interesting that they actually went straight to Quito. That's kind of a new thing that I wanted to actually mention, Ralph. The fact that they had to go, they didn't go like all these players that came from abroad. They didn't go to Asunción. They didn't train at Ibanez. They went straight to Quito. I think that's a good thing, and that's something that he actually alluded to even last time, that he wanted. That was the plan that he wanted to do. That he wanted to get all the players to be in Quito to get acclimatized for more time, as opposed to just going to Asunción and then going to Quito for maybe a day or so. This is a whole different case. He's there now for multiple days, and of course he knows the area well, so helps for Paraguay.
Yeah, although it's that kind of thing with altitude that there's so many different theories about what to do, right? So you have one time Paraguay went for 2-3 weeks to La Paz under Chiquiase to acclimatize, and that failed horribly. You have a lot of players or teams that only go at the last minute, so you don't feel the effects, because the effects of the altitude doesn't really kick in. So you still have all the red blood cells from being at a lower level, and you just go up at the last minute. So some teams try and do that. And then now we're in, I guess, the middle idea of being there for a few days. So hopefully enough to become acclimatized to the oxygen levels there. But I think what it's really done, though, which is a clever thing, is it's saved the journey, because otherwise, let's take Caco Romero. He has to find his way to Paraguay from United Arab Emirates, which is like a really difficult journey. And then he's only there for like a night, and then he ends up having to do another flight up to Quito. So I think this way of everybody meeting in Quito does save the legs of a lot of players. Like we said, we're talking about 11 different countries, 12 if you include Paraguay, coming together to form here. So I think that makes a lot of sense. In terms of will it work for acclimatization, like I say, there's all these different theories, and ultimately Paraguay have never won in Quito, so we'll have to see if it does work.
History. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to mention, when you usually have your first practice here in the country, you usually have like 5-6 players at the most at that practice. Usually by the second or third practice, you have the full squad. I think just going straight to Quito, that was the big advantage, just having everybody by the second practice. And we saw them already, right? Hitting the stadium, hitting a couple of balls, and pretty much everyone was already there. I think that was the main reason why they went straight to Quito.
It makes sense. It makes perfect sense. And of course, we have to talk about our rivals. We have to talk about Ecuador, because again, there is a lot really riding on this. One, of course, like Ralph had said, it's the history. Paraguay have never won in Quito, have never won in Ecuador out of all the games that they play. I just have the record here real quick: 9 games, 7 losses, and 2 draws. So it's been a difficult task, and we've been close. We've been close a few times, a couple draws here and there. The big one was, of course, when they were winning 2-1 in 2016. Lescano scored a brace that day, only for Angel Mena to kind of ruin that with a goal in the last minute. The last time that they played was a 2-0 loss back in 2021. So they've gotten our number in Quito most of the times. And just looking at how Ecuador have been doing in this qualifying process, they haven't been the flashy Ecuador that they haven't been under Gustavo Alfaro, because obviously they have a manager like Sebastián Becasese, obviously has, ties to Ecuador. Alfaro has that tie to Ecuador. So this is really a kind of a homecoming for him. But for Ecuador as a whole, they're needing this big win as well, because, the way that they've been forming, yes, they've gotten wins. They beat Peru last time. They barely lost to Brazil over there last month. But looking at some of the results, 1-0 to Chile, a 0-0 to Venezuela, 0-0 to Colombia. That was the last time they dropped points at home. They beat Bolivia barely, last minute goal in La Paz. They beat Uruguay 2-1, and then they lost to Argentina 1-0. So they haven't had any big blowouts, similarly to Paraguay, where they've scored 2 goals and they've conceded 3. So it really is kind of a battle of attrition, really, of really 2 teams that are good defensively. And given their depth that they have, obviously with quality players playing in the Premier League, playing, abroad in Europe or whatnot, they just haven't been able to score goals. So I don't know, man. Like, I want to go to Fede on this one. We'll go to our prediction soon, but I have a feeling this is going to be a really tight game because I think for both these two teams, they know that they can't afford to lose. And, they understand that in such a game full of tactical wit, both that Becasece and Alfaro can do. I think this is going to be a more tactical and physical game rather than just a direct game. That's just my impression.
Yeah, I do think Ecuador is really going to try to put the pressure on us. I don't know if they're going to do it straight from the locker room, and they're going to come with an important strategy in the second half, trying to win at home. Maybe right now they're in a good spot. Maybe they're just like it happened with Uruguay. They might even be happy to get a tie against us. I'm looking at it from the Becasese point of view, from the new coach. He needs to start building up, something in that locker room, trying to build confidence with his fans also there in Quito, who are expecting a lot of it out of this team because they see a lot of their players. They're playing in Europe. They got big players right now, and they want to go back to what they saw with Alfaro. I think Alfaro's going to get his claps there. I think he's going to get his applause because they miss him. I think a lot of people see him there as somebody that did the job the right way. And Becasese is still trying to learn the thing. He's still learning the players. He's still trying to get to know them. Ecuador took a long time to hire their coach, and I think Becasese is kind of against the ropes in this situation. And if they don't get a win at home, they're gonna look at him differently. So watch out if they don't get the opportunity to score first on us, and if the game heads into that long 80 minutes, still 0-0, still 0-0. We might see a Becasese that tries to go all out, trying to win it at home. And that could be an advantage for us also. But that's just the way I imagine it, right? From the strategy point of view of the other coach also, I do think there's going to be a lot of that. There's going to be a tactical match. I think the biggest advantage that we have is definitely Gustavo Alfaro, because he knows the players that he's going to go up against. And that's what I'm going to expect out of this game. I'm going to expect for the stars of Ecuador not to be able to do absolutely anything. And then we're going to get opportunities, maybe on the counter attack, maybe taking over in the midfield. I do think it's going to be more of a game to counter attack to get them when they try to come at us, and we have spaces back there, just because defensive wise, this team is very strong, guys. A lot of people talk about the firepower that Ecuador can have, but as of right now, I see them as a very strong defensive team. So I don't think it's a good idea to start this game attacking and let's go straight into them. No, I think we need to take the right approach like we did against Uruguay and wait for our opportunities to hit them when they least expect it.
Yeah, I mean, is a lot of pressure, I think, as Fede mentioned, on Ecuador compared to Paraguay, because Becasese came in and lost to Brazil. Obviously, it was an away game, but he lost to Brazil in his first game, and then they just scraped past Peru, who Peru have been now. We can now say with confidence are the worst team in the qualifiers because we're no longer down there with them. So I think that there is definitely a lot of questions to be asked. It does come to mind thinking about the tactical battle. Of course, Becasese is going to play with 3 at the back or 5 at the back, as he has been in the first 2 games. I'm sure he will continue that. And so you get an interesting battle with Estupinian, who will play possibly against Julio Enciso, right? Who are these teammates at Brighton, and then the other ex-Brighton player in Moises Caicedo, who had a much better game, I thought, recently against Peru. So you see these kind of, there's a few, you can already like tell there's going to be a few key players and some battles as well. And then a lot of pressure on Enner Valencia. Enner Valencia is the all-time top scorer, right? Or is he? Yeah, he is, right? All-time top scorer, captain, the veteran. And I think, as we were saying, they haven't scored a huge amount of goals either, Ecuador, so far in these qualifiers, less than 1 a game. So there's a lot of pressure, I think, on him to be able to try and lead that line. And he's going to find himself against 2 very physical defenders in Gustavo Gomez and Omar Alderete. So we'll have to see how he manages that game against, I think, two players that are well suited to defend against him.
Did I see correctly, or is Leo Campana also on this list, guys? The Inter Miami player. That could actually be a surprise because Ralph was just talking. We got big center backs. Leo Campana is huge, guys, and I think he's on a streak, right? He's been scoring lately. That's why he's been called up again after a very long time, I believe.
Yeah, it's
all-time top scorer of the Inter Miami, right? Still just ahead of Messi. Plays, of course, with Diego Gomez. I think that's right. Well, what we have to think about as well is set pieces. There was a time when Paraguay was really poor at defending set pieces, and it crossed over different managers. It was just we couldn't quite find that balance. We saw it in the Copa America. We suffered with that against James, for example, in the Colombia game. So that's going to be also a key point. And has Alfaro, for everything he's so good tactically, has he got them worked out on the very basics of those set pieces?
Yeah, no, it's going to be big. Honestly, it's going to be really big for them. And, you know, obviously, I think Paraguay would want to go in with being able to snatch a result there. I mean, look, if there's a game to make history, it's this one as well. I think, you know, Ecuador is not a poor team by any stretch of the imagination, but just because of the results that Paraguay have had, the understanding that Alfaro has, not just with Ecuador, but with a lot of these players. He's coached a lot of these players, so he probably knows them better than any of the other 8 countries in South America. So I think it's definitely an interesting aspect to look at it, where I think Alfaro is very meticulous in the way of his thinking that, yeah, I know what this player does, I know what this player does, so I want, you know, Gustavo Gomez to mark this one, or I want Enciso to run in this position because he's weak trying to defend this way. I mean, there's a lot going on, really, Fede. I think there is a lot, and I personally don't think it wouldn't be a surprise if Paraguay can go and snatch a result there. I'm not. That's not my prediction for now. I'm still thinking about it. But again, if they were to get a win, the first ever win in Quito, that's a big statement for Paraguay and for the rest of the continent to beat Paraguay, to beat Ecuador in Quito, a place that Ecuador don't really like to lose in.
After we beat Brazil, I do think the teams are looking at us differently. After we hired Gustavo Alfaro, I think people are looking at us differently because he's a coach that has the experience, has gone around, has gotten big wins. But after we beat Brazil, I mean, we got to respect by guys, especially in Defensores del Chaco. I do think when Venezuela comes around, they're gonna think, okay, how are we gonna treat this game? It's not gonna go the way that it has gone lately because this team is stronger now. And Alfaro's working on that. He's working on the mentality. He's working game by game in that situation. I think he obviously doesn't want to lose, but he's trying to build momentum. So why not get a draw up there? Why not get a good result, which would, in the way I see it, would be a draw. I'm aiming for 4 points again in this combo, just because 4 points would really have us in a really good position. And to get a win would be even bigger, guys. I mean, if Alfaro got his standing ovation going to different stadiums after beating Brazil, if you beat Ecuador in Quito, I mean, re-sign this coach for another 4 years. Forget about it. I mean, he clearly knows his stuff, especially with some of these names that he's put on this list, new names, right? And if he throws them out there straight away, I mean, he's just showing that he knows what he's doing. I'm really happy about that because the players are on his side. Nobody has complained. Antonio Sanabria, we haven't even mentioned him, but Tony is here again, and he didn't play a single minute. And he's coming all the way from Italy. So they're showing that a good attitude towards the situation, towards to trying to make this dream come true, which would be play in the next World Cup. And I do think Alfaro is working really well in that sense. He's getting into the players' minds. And the only thing that worries me, to be honest with you guys, is that Julio Cesar's not playing. Miguel Almiron barely plays. Ramon Sosa, yeah, he got his opportunity to score already, but they're barely playing. So that's the thing I'm worried about. How are they ready for 90 minutes? Are they ready for 2 games with just 3 days in between and going to Quito? I think he's going to be really. I think he's going to have to be very smart about that situation. I'm talking about our coach, right? And how many minutes he gives everybody, and what kind of role that he's going to need. I think you need to go all out against Venezuela. I don't think you need to go all out against Ecuador.
Yeah, but Ralph, I mean, it wouldn't be too far-fetched to go and get a win there. I feel like, why not? After the results we get, why not be able to get results in a way? I mean, that kind of also removes some of the bad results that we've had previously, with Garnero and Guillermo Barros Schelotto. I think getting in a dream world, getting 6 points, I think kind of eases the pressure even more so, where Paraguay can feel like they have the control in their hands. They have destiny to qualify in their own hands. So I don't see why. And again, if you have a manager that knows the country inside out, it's a golden opportunity, I think, honestly.
So you're predicting a win, right?
I didn't say that yet. I did not say that. No, no, not yet. But again, it's just like one of those
He
things.
jumped on the wagon, Ralph. He
I did
jumped
not
on the
do-
wagon.
I am not. I'm on the hype train, but I'm not exactly the conductor. But I'm just saying, like, why not? Why not?
So I think the way I imagine Alfaro setting up and the way the game will develop is we don't have Gomez, right? He's gonna wait. He knows Becasese is under pressure to attack him. He's gonna wait and pick up his moments. Could that turn into a 1-0 victory for Paraguay? It's not out of this question, right? But I don't think Paraguay's setting up looking for that win, and I think they will definitely walk away with a 0-0 like they did in Uruguay, or maybe possibly a 1-1. He'll be happy to take that point, especially given that Diego Gomez isn't playing. I don't think we should forget that because he's such a key part of this team.
No, it's a big ask, definitely a big ask, but it's going to be an interesting one on Thursday as we go into the next game against Venezuela over there in Defensores del Chaco. I mean, Fede, I'm expecting a packed house. I mean, look, if they get a big result against Ecuador, we're going to see the similar scenes that we saw against Brazil. I mean, this is a Venezuela side that had our number, unfortunately, in the last game that they played. They won 1-0, a goal from Rondon right at the end in Maturin, a really dirty game, if you remember it, that kind of sacked that kind of ended Guillermo Barros Schelotto's reign as the manager. But you look at the Venezuela side that, they got smacked by Bolivia 4-0 in El Alto. They also tied Uruguay over there in Maturin. The way that they've been performing, it's not the one that we saw from last year. They've kind of been on a downward, I wouldn't say spiral, but they're definitely been inconsistent. 1-1 draw against Peru, 0-0 against Ecuador. Their last win was against Chile back in October of 2023 when they won 3-0. I mean, so it's kind of felt like the Venezuela side is still a very impressive side. They are still very good and very much a talented team with so many good players at their disposal of what Fernando Batista has been doing, but you're kind of catching them at a moment where they're feeling a lot more cold than they are hot, if that makes sense. And doing it at home where Paraguay usually historically, besides the two losses they had, they always get good results there. And I feel like it's an obligation more so to get the win against El Vino Tinto over there in Defensores.
We're down in the standing, guys. These are the games that we have to win. These are the games that I'm expecting to win. And these are the games that we need to be a strong team having the ball, just like Ralph was saying at the beginning of the show. I think that's going to be the bigger responsibility on this midfield to have the ball a lot more. And I do think Diego Gomez is going to be huge in this game. He's going to have another big game like he did against Brazil, or especially that first half. He leaves it all out there, guys, and that's something I love to see also from Diego Gomez. I mean, he's usually tired by the minute 70, and he doesn't have enough for 90 minutes because he gives it his all. And hopefully he is 100%. It's good that he's not going to play the first game, like Ralph said, because it's going to give us the opportunity to see the best out of Diego Gomez. And we have something with Venezuela. I think a lot of people here in Paraguay have Venezuela in their minds after what happened several times, especially in the opportunity that we had to go to that World Cup and they beat us here in Defensores del Chaco. So there's a bargain there. And we've been waiting for a coach to know his stuff and know his way around these kind of teams, and we haven't found it. So I'm hoping that Alfaro knows that this is a very, very important game. I hope he has not put all his energy just into, oh, I'm going to mess up Ecuador because I want my ex team to know what they're missing. No, I don't want Alfaro's focus to be that. I want Alfaro's head to be on Venezuela. That's the team I believe we need to win. That's the game I believe we need to build on. And I think that's what we're gonna see, right? Just because you mentioned Pita, just because am I here?
Yeah, keep going. You're good, man.
just because Pita, I believe, is going to start again. He's going to get his opportunity, and we're going to see Julio Cesar. We're going to see Almiron. We're going to see that attacking team that we saw against Brazil. We're going to need to handle that responsibility of having the ball. I don't know why I see maybe another sub coming in there because of just how much you're going to have to run in Quito. I do think certain players will be tired. I think you're gonna have to mix it up around, but that's the game I want to win, guys. I mean, if we lose against Ecuador, I'm not gonna be down at all. The one that I'm expecting for this team to win is at home. We need our fans by our side, and after what we did against Brazil, we need to build on that.
Yeah, it has to be a much different performance than what you expect against Ecuador, right? Like being on the front foot, looking for goals, looking for the win. And I think it's interesting you mentioned Peter because I think he will play as well. And when Peter plays, you're not really necessarily looking for him to score. What you're looking for him to do is hold up and bring other players into the game, which he did so well against Brazil. And who are those players that are going to be running on? It's going to be Diego Gomez, it's going to be Almiron if he plays, and it's going to be Enciso, right? So I think it becomes a totally different type of challenge or a type of game to what we see against Ecuador. And the one thing that I suppose worries me or I have the doubt about is, like I was saying earlier in the show, like we haven't seen Paraguay in this position yet under Alfaro. And when we did see them try and dominate a lot of possession under Garnero, they just weren't good enough in transition defensively, and they ended up losing those games and conceding goals. So I think that's maybe where the doubt is. But I do think we're going to see like a totally different setup, even in terms of fullbacks, actually, right? If let's say Junior Alonso ends up playing in Quito, he's not going to start here. It's going to be somebody like, I would guess, Asamendia, right? Who's the more attacking of the left backs. So I think we're going to see like two very different games. And the Venezuela game is going to be much more positive, much more looking to take the results and get the win, which is a must win. It has to be said. You have to win at home to Bolivia and Venezuela to qualify for the World Cup. It's just been proven time and time again.
Yeah, and I think as well, like the whole notion of Alfaro saying, keeping the clean sheet gets you to the World Cup. So I think not only do they have to score, but they also have to make sure that they are defensively solid. That's kind of been the thing that he has been preaching on for quite some time. And I think this might be one of those cases where we go again and try to go for another shutout in both these two games. Not saying they might go for wins, but hey, it might be in that case. But I think now it's time for the big one. It's our predictions. What do we see from these two games? Let's go to the one in Quito in the Casablanca, as they say over there in Liga de Quito. Big game, obviously a homecoming for Alfaro. I'm gonna go first in my prediction, and I'm gonna go to Ralph. I honestly, as much as I'm flirting with the win, and it would be really nice to get it, I don't see that happening. I'm really seeing one of those like really tactically astute matches, very much a smart tactical matchup between both Becasese and Alfaro. I think both these two teams will try to shut each other out and, definitely cancel each other out. But it's ultimately a good result that I think Paraguay will be happy with if they do get it. I'm going to say a 0-0 over there in Quito. Ralph, what do you think?
Yeah, I think definitely a draw. I don't know if I want to say 0-0. I'll say 1-1 because I think we get a penalty and Alex Arce scores.
Well, talk about drama there. But what is it? Do we take the lead, or do we score the equalizer? That's the thing.
We take the lead and then they come back and score in the second half, which I think they've done in the last two games up there.
Interesting. Fede, what do you say? Do you agree with us? Are you a bit more pessimistic, or are you going all out for history?
I'm thinking about what I said last time around, and against Uruguay, I thought it was gonna be a win, and we kind of deserved that win, right? And I ended up going with a tie, and you ended up being correct, Roberto, because you went with the tie in that opportunity, and then you said a win against Brazil. I'm actually thinking that we can actually do it there, guys. I mean, I actually think that we can win, but I'm gonna stick with the tie. Just because Alfaro's going to feel sorry for those guys. Alfaro's going to see this game and he's gonna feel that no, I can't put these guys on the ground. I can't do it. I can't do what I tried to do against Uruguay. He had Uruguay against the ropes, and he made those changes to try to be a more aggressive and attacking team in those last minutes. He tried to win that game, and I don't know if he's gonna take that attitude against Ecuador just because of what he feels about Ecuador, just because he doesn't want to beat them on the ground. So we'll just take a tie from them. We'll leave them this time around alone. We want to win against Venezuela.
Do we score? Do we score, or do you feel like it's gonna be scoreless? Okay.
No, I think it's gonna be a 1-1, just like Ralph was saying. I'm gonna go with that same score. I think maybe Alex Arce, maybe Angel Romero, who has been looking hot lately, could come in this game and make the difference. But Alex Arce, I want to see him score. I mean, I see him score every single weekend with Liga de Quito. I want to see him score at least once with our national team.
I mean, and he's doing it at the stadium he knows well, so it kind of makes sense to do it there out of all the stadiums in the world to play. So yeah, no, I agree. For his first goal at Liga de Quito Stadium, I mean, that would be very much a special moment for him. The big game too, of course, to win at home is against Venezuela. That's happening on Tuesday, a couple of days after this game against Ecuador. Obviously, 1 point from that game would really rejuvenate the Paraguay crowd. Like you said, Fed, at the beginning, you haven't seen much flags in the streets, but probably this time next week, exactly next week, that could change if they do get the result over there in Quito. But it's the big one. It's the one that we need to obviously win after coming from the result against Brazil. I'm going to go on this one. I think this is the game where we finally break our duck. No, it's not to score, but it's to score multiple goals. I see a 2-0 in this one. I think Paraguay finally are able to kind of break through and be able to score multiple goals, which is needed, of course. That's the one thing I ask. I have a good feeling about Enciso for some reason. I feel like he's going to have fun with this team. I think he's going to be kind of, I don't want to say the hero, but he's definitely going to be one of the big ones that, as much as there's been a lot of criticism of him and, you know, him not playing and kind of his attitude, I think a game like this is the best way for him to silence some doubters. So I see him scoring, and I'll say Pita. I'll say Pita gets his first Paraguay goal as well. So I'm getting those two on the score sheet to win 2-0 against El Vinotinto. Fede, what do you think? What do you see as you picture yourself there in Sajonia next week?
I'm going to be drinking my wine after this game, guys. It's going to be a 3-1 win for Paraguay. I do think it's going to be a tight one, though. You know, that first half, I think is going to be really hard. But I think, just like you're saying, we're going to break through eventually. Players are going to feel the fans by their side, and we're going to leave there even happier than how we left after beating Brazil. I want to have that feeling. I want to get used to that feeling again of winning and winning at home.
That is we need that winning streak, especially playing at home. But ultimately, that is, at least for my prediction, that would be 8 points in 4 games. I mean, that's something that Paraguay desperately need. I mean, Ralph, are you going to be on our side unanimously and say we get the win and we really kickstart or not even kickstart, but really go into contention to qualify for the World Cup?
I think we get the win, yes. I don't know if we get the 2-goal win, as everybody is saying, because historically we've rarely done that against Venezuela. It's always been a tight match. I also noticed we've conceded in the last 3 home games, right? Because there were the 2 defeats, and then even the last win was 2-1. So they always do seem to find a way to score past us. So I think we're going to win 2-1, and Diego Gomez is going to score the winner. He's going to be the hero again.
I mean, come on. If you're scoring 2 goals, is he going to score the way that he scored against Brazil, though, or is this going to be a little bit more simple? Just like
scrappy in the box, deflected goal.
Man, you're ruining it. I was thinking like maybe a free kick or something like that. But yeah, no, I think it would be big. And then like, again, like, you know, heading into November with next month, we got Bolivia and Argentina. But I mean, you know, just kind of closing it out here. It would be really nice to see Paraguay unbeaten after these 4 games under Alfaro. I mean, I wonder what the mentality, like let's say, Fede, like say Paraguay do get these results, or even more so, what if they get the 6 points? I mean, that is going to change a lot of discourse in the country now, because it felt like, yeah, we saw this against Uruguay and Brazil. Maybe some people are still pessimistic because of getting our hopes up in the past after good results. But if we run consistently and get these good results, I mean, I think now people are going to be very much taking them seriously, especially now in such a crucial point of the qualifying process.
No, that would just be a miracle, guys. If that actually happens, if we get 6 points in these two games, I think we're talking about a miracle, because that would put us back on track, right? That would put us back probably on a position to really think about just qualifying directly to the World Cup, and that would leave us in a very good place to head into the November games, which are going to be very big, especially with Messi coming in here in defensa as a tackle, which would probably be the hardest game we have all year, and going to La Paz. So yeah, if we could aim for those 6 points, I think that would be the ideal, right? Just so we can take some weight off our shoulders, thinking ahead of what could happen in November, which I believe, and a lot of people think, it's the worst combo that we could have had, right? Go to La Paz and then play the world champions, which are still Argentina.
Yeah, I mean, our rivals in this at the moment are Bolivia and Venezuela, pretty much, right? Bolivia on 9 points, Venezuela on 10. I mean, Brazil too, but I think Bolivia and Venezuela are more the rivals. They both play, I think they both play Argentina this in this match round, and then we're playing Argentina in the next one. So if we get those 4 points now, even the 6 points, but let's say we get the 4 points, I get the feeling we'll be just ahead of Bolivia and Venezuela, especially Venezuela, who we would beat in theory. So we're starting to find ourselves not in the playoff spot, but in the actual right spot to be in, and it puts us just in a great position. But that next round, we're playing Venezuela at home and then Bolivia away. Those two games, they're the key rivals, right, that we have now as we try and just snatch that last place in qualifiers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I think all of us are really excited. We'll obviously have the reaction, and hopefully that we get a repeat of what we saw last month, or even better. I mean, we had 4 points last time. Why not go for 6 this time around? So I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure both of you guys are really much expecting that what's going to happen in Quito and in Asunción next week. I'm looking forward to it, and we'll obviously have all the coverage as we always do here on Guarani Vision as we close out this World Cup qualifying preview episode. For myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hanna, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.